Because you don't just wake up and start hating your own people or start
No,
hating your country where
but
you have like,
there is a strain of people in this country, and I haven't noticed it anywhere else. And I have
mm,
asked, if they have the same thing. I was in Greece
mm,
last September, and I was talking to this Greek fella, and he was very knowledgeable. I was saying to him, do you have anybody in Greece? If Greece was playing England, or let's not say England, if Greece was playing Spain at football, do you have any Greek people who would want Spain to win? And he
they
was
would
just astonished.
consider them not Greek
Yeah, and
completely.
he was just astonished that I could even ask that.
Yeah,
And I said, because there's people in England that want England to
yeah.
lose. And
First
I
time
don't
that
know
I
where
knew.
that comes from. And I
Yeah,
don't know I don't understand what the evolutionary use of that is.
yeah.
Why would you have people in your midst?
Why would you have your enemies living amongst you? What
Yeah,
is the
but
context?
self-grown. I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
talking. I'm not talking about Islamists. I'm talking about white
no,
middle-class
yeah.
English people.
That's why I brought that up about that thing as well. Like narratives become facts over time, right? So you have to see like what has been done to people like Tommy Robinson in our recent times, when you know that there is no fact to support whatever claims are against him. The same that has been done with Enoch Powell over the time, because people were unwilling to intellectually engage with him. This is how the seed of anti-Britishness as well has made into a fact, right? Like saying that Winston Churchill was a racist and he caused the famine and stuff, when the facts point otherwise, that it was, the people over there as well causing issues, right? But it's become such a fact that nobody wants to engage and say, oh, Winston Churchill, the most prominent hero in our modern times of Britain, in British modern times, because that's still comparatively modern for Britain, it was a racist. When your biggest hero that you have the most relevance to is been shown to you as a fact that he was not a hero but a villain,
Mm, mm,
in certain cases, then you start losing that connection, and then
mm.
you
But
start
that's deliberate, isn't
feeling,
it? It's deliberate.
yeah,
The
yeah,
reason they went after Churchill
yeah,
is because they know how we revere him.
yeah.
That's why they went after him.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the World of Momos podcast. And on this section of reflections and reactions, we have my friend Citizen X over here. Citizen X has his own podcast as well. It's a very good podcast. I'll put the links below in the description, but it should be on up here somewhere as well if I can figure out how to do it. So we are going to talk with Steve about sort of what's going on in England, and what are the people's feelings, what are their hopes, and are they getting blackpilled, or is there some moment that we can hope for? So how are you?
Well, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm still alive, just like the rest of us, I suppose. Um, it's all difficult, but I'm still here.
So what is the main feeling around, first, what is the main feeling around immigration, just in general, like what it was before for you as well, like personally for you, and what it is now, like if we do a like 10-year synopsis of it.
Well, I mean, I like a lot of other people. Um, you notice this thing going on. We've been noticing it since the Blair era. Um, And although it took probably a few years for people to notice what was happening in terms of the numbers, and you, like everyone else, I probably felt as if it was a bit of a live wire topic, and you didn't want to you didn't really want to talk, you didn't really want to touch the topic because of what you thought people might think of you, And it's one of those things. It was a very subtle thing. The whole idea of the conversation about immigration was just sort of very gently pushed off to one side, and there would be lots of what would you say, some sort of lazy remarks about anybody who complained about it was racist.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it wasn't always it wasn't always explicit, but it was just sort of raised eyebrows and then
Did
be
you
sort of
did you feel like, um because reading back on things, because I wasn't here around that time, so I don't know the feelings around that time, right? So in the 90s. But do you think that what they managed to do across both aisles is make it into a done case? Like, oh, it's already settled. It's a settled case. Immigration is good. No matter how much kind of immigration, it's good for the economy. Like, all those lines,
Mm,
and they just made it into a settled thing, right? Like, just like we have now, the climate experts, right?
mm.
These data people who are not scientists at all, saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, the climate thing is settled." Like, it's a settled science sort of thing. Do
I,
you feel like that's what they did with immigration? So
well,
that
no,
when you talk about it, you.
I think it was more subtle than that actually, because
Mm,
I think it was um, it it's not really all that bad. It's not as bad as you think. The numbers aren't that big.
mm,
It'll calm down in a year or two. It's a sign of it's a sign of a booming economy. Um,
that people want to
and
come here and stuff like that.
yeah, and we should feel happy that people want to come here and be a part of our society and all the rest of it. Um, and it was just sort of it was brought in under the radar. Really,
Mm,
it was brought. It was. We don't want to talk about it. The only person who talks about it, the only person who complains about it is Tommy Robinson
mm,
and everybody else. And I fell for that. Well, I fell for the whole Tommy Robinson is a right wing thug thing as well.
mm.
I mean, I fell for it just like everybody else did.
Yeah.
And it
Do
was
you find
always
it
very
odd though, like, that they try to blame, like, I don't find it odd, right? Because I was the same, right? I was fooled into that as well.
mm,
But it just is so weird that you would blame immigration on him. Like, me personally as well, and other people who were fooled into it. The media framed it that way. When, he is from Luton, so that he's from, like, multicultural sort of area.
mm.
Most of his friends are, like, black or Asian and stuff. He has a lot of friends like that. And he was only talking about Islam.
Mm. But we didn't know about his the friends that he had at the time.
Yeah.
'Cause that wasn't the thing. What he was he was a you know he was a bogeyman.
Mm,
And because he's got that very working class Luton accent,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, you know,
And that
he
way
was
about
somebody,
him, like, yeah.
he was somebody who was easy to hate,
Yeah,
and of
he's
course
a lad though,
was,
yeah.
he
Yeah.
was a football thug,
Yeah.
and I think he probably even admits it, even acknowledges it himself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so he was. If anybody wanted to have a sort of nuanced discussion about stuff
Mm,
about this subject,
mm,
he was the person that you could conjure up and say, I'm concerned about immigration, but I'm not like Tommy Robinson,
yeah. Yeah.
you know. And
Unfair. Yeah.
so he was kind of a bit of a whipping boy for everybody to say,
Mm,
I may be concerned about immigration, but I'm not like Tommy Robinson. I'm not like him, you
yeah.
know. And
So then you can't really have a proper conversation. That's what my
mm,
feeling is. That's what they had to establish, right? Because, like you said, like, people were seeing in the 90s as well, and there were valid concerns that, is it good or is it not? But they move the conversation in a way, no, it is good, and anyone who's complaining is a thug like him,
mm,
right? So then, even if you have to put a qualifier that, oh yeah, I want to talk about immigration, I'm concerned, but I'm not like him, you already are conceding that you're not going to be honest about it, because there's some things that you're going to hold back, right? And then you can't have an open conversation, because,
yeah. He was outside the Overton window. Yeah, fine.
yeah.
You there are certain things you can say, certain things you can talk about, um, and and but he was always the live wire that everybody would
Mm,
use as at least we're not like him,
yeah. Yeah.
and then of course 10, 15 years down the track you find that of all the people who are lying about everything, at least on this subject he was the one person who was telling the truth. So
Yeah.
you got to a situation where from a point of view of a nice middle class, well
mm.
brought up person, you had this sort of the nightmare of the one person that you don't want to be telling the truth is the person who's telling the truth.
And he's probably the only person telling the truth about
Yeah,
a lot of things on that
yeah,
regard. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I like I say, I was fooled by the
Mm,
media's portrayal of him as well. For a long time,
mm,
and then, and then I started looking for things that he'd said, and
mm,
I found that I didn't actually I couldn't find
mm,
anything that racist that he'd ever said,
mm.
you know. But he was often on those sort of talk shows, those audience talk shows,
Yeah.
and he would say something, and he would say something quite sensible,
Mm,
because everybody on the program hated him,
yeah.
you know.
So
That,
they would
that
combine in their sort of attack on him.
yeah, and then the
Um,
person who attacked him would always get an ovation, and
yeah.
a round of
Yeah.
applause for it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so
And
it's
that
funny
that
how.
didn't just happen with him. I think so that happened with a lot of people,
Mm,
and have happened more and more and more, where anyone, not just on the case of Islam, but on the case of immigration and on the case of Britain itself, right? That whole idea of, oh yeah, Britain is racist, and they were the colonizers and stuff like that, and anyone who wanted to even say that, the say nice things about the British Empire, they started getting, you know sort of like what happened few years ago to David Starkey as well.
mm,
And these sort of things started happening more and more. I think so this is what people's, hopefully their eyes are opening up, that they're trying to link it with immigration, but it's not really about immigration. In my view, I don't know, like I want to know like what you think about this as well. It's like people had valid concerns before, but because immigration was lower before the 90s,
mm,
they were seeing it as, oh well, it's a good inclusion, like, because we are the British Empire anyways. We have like these cultures, you know in our previous empire, let's bring them here. That's not a problem, right? And they use that to do it more and more and more. And then there's some sort of subversion of the British culture itself as well that happened. And now obviously people are seeing this, that it's not about immigration, it's just about anything, it's about anti-British attitude,
mm, mm,
that an anti-white and anti-British white attitude, right? So if you even want to say, like, talk about the working class people, you have to include someone from the ethnic minority. Like,
mm,
you can't include the actual working class people. Like, they're not talked about in the councils properly, like, work for them. They're not talked about in the government. They're not talked about in the media. And especially if you're a white man, then like no one gives a shit about you. So, but the troubling for me has been that even the white British people don't care about the working class,
no.
right? And it's sort of like, well, this is an ideology that's coming in, which is actually, it has nothing to do with immigration is a tool for it, and is using it, right? And I feel bad for other sort of immigrants as well, that they are being used, right? Because they are being given different signals. Different people come here for different reasons. I came here for the love of Britain. Other people might come here for different reasons, just economical reasons. Like,
Mm,
I might go to Singapore for like 3-4 years and work over there, right? You don't expect me to leave any loyalty to Britain and just become a Singaporean.
mm, yeah.
You don't expect that, but like, I'll go back, sort of a thing. So there's a lot of people who would move for that, and it's fine as long as you respect the laws and values of that place, right? But those people are being used as well. And and I feel like those refugees as well, some of them, genuine ones, they are being used as well, because they're being given a carrot, sort of a thing. Oh yeah, so you can come over here.
Mm,
And when they come over here, they realize, the situation, the government is saying something else, and the public is feeling something else,
mm,
and the
mm,
public has valid reasons. So it's come to a point where I think so, where it's going, for me, as far as I see it, that is going to start becoming very hostile towards anyone who doesn't look
Well,
British.
this is something that I worry about. This is
Hmm.
something I'm because the conversation has now got so toxic, and since the business in Gaza,
Hmm.
the situation has got so toxic now that I've noticed that there are people who who just have sort of uh, you know perhaps principled objections to mass immigration. Um, that they're just complaining about they were just complaining about the immigration, the
Hmm.
numbers, or the strain on the resources, or the infrastructure, and damaging to the culture, or whatever it is. And I found that some of these people now are, and I don't want to name any names, but some of
Hmm.
these people are actually saying really things that I really don't agree with. In that nobody with dark skin can be British or
Yeah.
English, and I'm
Hmm.
getting seeing that a lot.
Hmm.
And this is the result of this: is that if it does get really nasty, which it has the potential to do,
Hmm.
people won't have time for nuance. They'll
Hmm.
say, "Look at that bloke,
Yeah.
look at that Pakistani looking bloke. He doesn't
Exactly.
look like us, you
Yeah.
know, and let's get him." And it'll be, if you try and stick up for that, it means, oh, you're on their side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the thing I fear, and I
The
don't know if I'm.
ethno-nationalism going towards this ethno-nationalism route.
Yeah,
That's what I
and
fear.
I
So
mean,
yeah.
some people have described themselves as being ethno nationalists. I'm talking mostly about people online that I know
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
and you'll know the sort of people I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and some of them are very eloquent. Some
Hmm.
of them have really good arguments,
Hmm.
and that's fair enough. But there are people who were just talking about immigration, and
Yeah.
now they're talking about, you know, they're saying things like, if a dog's born in a stable, doesn't make it a horse, and
Yeah.
that kind of
It's
thing,
yeah.
you know, and I never really liked that argument,
Hmm.
and because apart from anything else, it's not the stable that makes it a horse,
Yeah, and
is
it's not different species. Like
yeah,
it's still
exactly,
human.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. At the same time, I cannot wholly blame them for having these feelings and stuff because I
But
feel
they've been
like
forced
it's
into
only
it.
yeah, yeah. That's what I feel. They've been pushed into it.
People have been
You know.
forced into it.
Yeah.
Where are your loyalties, mate? Are they
Yeah.
here
Exactly.
or are they here?
Yeah.
No, oh, but they're sort of in. We can't have you sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
Either
Because
you're
it's
with
not the
us or
time
you're
for it.
not.
Yeah.
And it's really quite horrible. I think this has the potential to be quite horrible.
Yeah.
You know, um, and
I
I
mean,
mean,
what we've seen like recently with in Rochdale with George Galloway as well. That's
mm,
why I've been saying like the answer to these problems is not politics. Because if we make politics an answer, we'll just segregate more and more. Because then people will become ethno nationalists. Because
yeah,
that's how they will get the votes that they want. That
mm,
because you have to build a narrative for politics and stuff. The answer has to be through culture, through like, sort of like a cultural movement, revival of culture, making people feel like it's not
mm,
bad to be British. Actually, we should celebrate being British and stuff.
mm, mm,
Integration culture and stuff like that, and understanding that the people of these lands have been living here for a very, very long time. They have traditions, values, and culture, which should be respected because that's the culture that it should be. So if you want to integrate into it, fine. If not, then you can fuck off, right? So there has to be those elements as well, but it's not on the basis of whether you're white or not, right? But also not even on that basis as well, like people of different ethnicities like myself who have immigrated over here. If I start calling myself English and asserting that I am English and you accept that I'm English, I think so that's idiotic as well. Because I'm not even born over here, right? So, and me asserting myself as I'm ethnically English now, like, because it
mm,
is sort of like I'm not Anglo-Saxon, so I
mm,
can't prove that, right? So, this idea we have to bring as well, probably like I'm coming over here not so that I can be English, so that I can lay the roots so that my future generations can be, right?
mm. Yeah.
Right.
So,
So that's a different
do you
concept.
think the point at which you could say, maybe you feel that you can't ever describe yourself as English, but if
Yeah,
you had a son or a daughter,
yeah.
do you think that the idea is that then they can?
The idea for like, because it needs to be discussed more, like, because I think so they would be closer to calling themselves English than me,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
And the more generations that they are of like further down the line, the more closer they will be
mm,
and becoming properly English then
mm,
eventually, right?
yeah.
So I mean, it takes certain generations. You can't just have it in one generation and second generation. I think so, specifically and especially if you're living in a parallel culture within the country, right? That's
Mm,
where my problem happens. Like, okay, you're 3 or 4 generations in. Oh, sorry, my phone fell down. You're 3 or 4 generations in England, right? But you're still not English because you're not even British, right? Because you're still waving
mm,
the flags of some other country.
mm,
You're still supporting some other country when you go to see cricket matches,
mm,
right? You, and you're still more concerned about their politics, their culture, right? So it's sort of like, it's not just being born over here that would make someone British
mm.
and eventually English as well. It's like, how much are you actually part of that country and how much are you invested in it?
Yeah, this is
Especially.
difficult because this is difficult for me because
Yeah.
I always used to say, well, if you were born here,
Hmm.
then you're British. It's simple
Yeah.
as that. And I was
But British,
clear.
right? British should be.
Well, I would say British because I mean it's funny because we tend to think of English as being an ethnicity,
Yeah. Yeah.
but really it's British, which is well, I mean, you know, people can disagree, but
Yeah.
England is a political entity.
Yeah. And
But
within England, you have Anglo Saxons and you have
yeah,
other. Yeah.
but being a Briton, is somebody from the island of Great Britain.
Yeah.
It's just a geographical thing.
Yeah.
Whereas England is a political construct because it stops at
Hmm.
Wales and it stops at Scotland.
Yeah.
So it's a, but nevertheless, we tend to think of English people as being an ethnicity.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah. I
this
mean,
is
do you think so? Like, because I see that as a bit both valid, right? Like, it's a political entity, but
mm,
also it's a nation of people
mm,
who have been over years. The reason why they call English is because over years there have been other Huguenots and whatnot within Anglo Saxons come in, but that's a long time ago, and they have assimilated into one body of people, people who were here and people who came from, like, that was a long time ago, right?
mm,
So length of time and the assimilation and a shared culture and shared values and shared people, right? So if, like, that's why, like, I know you're thinking like that. I used to think like that as well for any country, but I've changed my mind on it,
mm.
that I don't, especially when I've seen more and more Marxist and Islamist come about, at just being born in a country does not make you of that country anymore.
No, I mean the thing is, it's muddied the waters now because
Yeah.
the reason I used to say that
Private loyalties are. Yeah.
well because it was clear. It
Mm.
seemed to be clear. If you're born here, you're
Yeah.
British. If you're not born here, you're not.
Yeah.
Now, but then you can say, well, somebody who's been here for 20 years and they've assimilated properly and they've got a British husband or wife or
Mm.
something and they brought up children. Then it starts to get already. It's starting to blur.
Yeah.
And then I've been forced into revisiting that
Yeah.
because of the amount of people who've been here for 3 or 4 generations and don't consider themselves to be British.
Yeah.
And then also there's people that there are people who are actively gaming the system.
Yeah.
They'll come to England, they'll come to
Yeah.
Britain
Just for the
just so
passport.
they can give birth in Britain.
Yeah.
So the child then automatically becomes British.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how you work that out properly. But
I mean, if let's say, because it's uncomfortable, if because it's hard, right? If you are from that country yourself, so I can say certain things because I'm looking from outside in.
yeah,
Like, it's been a while, it's been 14 years, but still I have that perspective because I'm 38. So
mm,
most of my life has been outside of England, right? So if we take the example that everyone likes to use anyways of Japan, right?
mm,
You don't become Japanese if you were
no,
born in Japan, right?
no,
So
mm,
and it's very easy for us to say that straight away because we're like, yeah, you're not, like, you
mm,
can't be,
mm,
because we know they have such a long history, right? of what it means to be Japanese is instinctively means to be Japanese, right? So that's what you're saying of blurring the lines. It has to be so blur that it's indistinguishable
mm,
for it to be of Japan then, right? So it would take someone few generations. That's why I feel as well like I can call myself British because British is like sort of a union, right? And I'm a part of it, political part of it. I've
mm,
been given a passport and stuff like that, and I hold my loyalties. I've taken allegiance to Britain, right? But for me to be English, like I can never be English in for me, even though within Britain I associate with England the most,
mm.
right? Because that's
Yeah.
how it is. But
Does that make you sad?
no, no, no. It's a reality. It doesn't make me sad because it would sort of be like making me feel sad that I can't become a woman. You know what I mean? It's like no,
Oh
no.
yeah.
I have a mental disorder. That means
Yeah. Well, you
it's
can do
not
that
for
now.
me.
You
Yeah.
you can do that now. As horrifying as that may
Yeah.
sound.
But you know what I mean? It's like you have to face certain realities. You have to understand. Yes, I am calling myself British because of me leaving my tribe on my own terms and then coming over here, right, and swearing allegiance to this tribe, right. But I can't be of those people unless, like, I can't be genetically of those people. It will take a while for that to happen. So those are the realities. That doesn't mean that I am excluded from things, right? And that's not the case. The English people don't exclude me from anything,
Mm,
right? But it's also realizing there's certain things that I need to learn as well, of like, the things. And there's certain things that I won't like, the kind of foods, the kind of like, the little things that makes an English person an English person, right? I won't because I haven't lived that life for a while. But
mm,
like you said, like my kids would be closer to that,
mm,
but because they're still attached to me and my wife, like, in immediate terms, they would still take our cultures more than the
mm.
English culture, right? Because
Yeah.
that's from the home. But
Mm,
then their kids would be more detached from us, and then their kids would be more detached from us and more attached to England. And I
mm.
think so that's the chain that needs to happen. But
I
if
suppose that's yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I often hear from people who are, first generation immigrants,
Mm,
or second generation rather. Um, you often hear this thing. They say, "Well, I don't feel I belong." It's like
mm.
I was born here, but I'm black, and my mum was from Jamaica or something. And I often think, well,
Have you made the
I
effort?
suppose that's
Mm.
something that I haven't experienced. It's not something I'm having to grapple with. Um, but I do find that um, it's it's kind of a it just means your life isn't perfect.
Mm.
It's not perfect. So your parents moved countries, and now you're dealing with this. Well, okay, well it's a bit of a difficulty perhaps, but there's an awful lot worse difficulties people have to deal with.
Yeah.
If you grow up, paralyzed or in a wheelchair or whatever these things, you're healthy and you're moving around in a supposedly, at least until fairly recently, supposedly free country.
Mm.
You know, it's not in the great lottery of life. It's not a bad one. It's
Yeah,
just that
it's better than a lot of other options.
yeah.
Plus,
So
like, you have to think as well, like how much of an effort have you put, right? So, if I give you an example of it, so my wife is from Poland, right, and she's the one who says that as well. Like when Polish people like sometimes say like, oh, like English people don't like us, whatever. She always says, well, how much of an effort did you put? Right? So, because you live in your communities with your people, you don't make that many friends outside. I'm not
mm,
saying that about all the Polish people, but the people that she was talking to, like,
mm,
so you haven't made that effort. So, obviously, you haven't, assimilated with them. So, it's
mm,
hard for them to like you. It's the same thing as it's not as if they dislike you, it's just that there's no vibe, right? So they won't hang out with you as much. And it's the same as if the English person would go and start living in move their family to, let's say, China, right?
mm, mm.
Right. not all Chinese people are just gonna become your friends and stuff. You're gonna have a hard time. People are not going to accept you as Chinese
Yeah.
at all during your whole lifetime. Maybe your children, they will still make fun of your children,
Mm.
saying, "Oh yeah, you like a bit like different, like your face is not like that and
Mm.
stuff like that." These things happen because you're moving to a different country, but different people, different environment, different culture, different foods, different languages and stuff. It is expected, but also comes down to how much of an effort did you make. Did you always stick out your own culture at people? It's like, oh no, respect me because I'm my culture. Did you respect their culture? Are you constantly going around and saying because you're from India, Pakistan, or from Africa or whatever, oh yeah, but the British colonized us and you are racist, like,
Mm.
are you constantly
Well, you
poking
wouldn't want
like,
to hang out with someone like that.
no, who would?
Yeah, I mean, it just, I mean, at the very, I mean, even if they're right, you don't want to be
Yeah,
reminded of that in a personal friendship, do you? I mean, you can, there's banter, and you
yeah,
can tease each other and stuff like that, but
yeah.
and that's just normal thing. I mean, I did my uh, when I was doing my um anti-cashless society stall
Hmm.
that I do from time to time,
Yeah.
and it just so happened I met a guy that I was at school with.
Hmm.
And he just came up and he recognised me. I didn't, and then I recognised him. And he's been living in China for 30 years,
Nice.
and he doesn't speak the language.
Ah, that's odd.
He doesn't speak the language because he lives in a compound with all the other expats.
So he
And
doesn't really live in China.
I just thought, what's the point? You think you'd,
It's
I
like
mean,
living in Chinatown rather than
yeah,
China, right?
exactly, yeah, yeah. So I thought that was
Yeah.
I mean, half the point of travel is that you
Experience, yeah.
experience things, and you can never really know a country properly until you speak the
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what was your English like before you came here?
Well, English was always taught to me, so it was sort of my first language more than my
Okay,
own
yeah,
language. So that was the thing with me, that I was, as a because we had three languages when I was growing up, right? So we had my mom and dad, because I was born in Kuwait, right, in Middle East. So that was their language of Arabic.
yeah,
My mom and dad were from Pakistan, so the language in our home was Urdu, and the language that was being taught at school was English, and all the media and everything was in English, right?
mm,
So as a compromise, and my granddad, like when I was growing up, he spoke more English than Urdu,
okay.
right?
So
So
in Pakistan, because of how many languages are in Pakistan?
in Pakistan there are,
How many main ones?
so there's Punjabi, Balochi, Sindhi, Saraiki, Pashtun, or Pashto, and Urdu is like the national language, but it's only speaking by is only the mother tongue of 8% of the country.
Okay, so
Urdu.
you use English as a lingua franca, do you? Or
No, in Pakistan you use Urdu
okay, right,
as a
okay.
unifying sort of language, sort of a
I
thing.
see. Right, okay.
But because I didn't grew up in Pakistan, till I didn't go to Pakistan till I was 15 years old. I
Mm,
grew up in Kuwait, and over there it was Arabic, and everyone would speak Arabic, and their second language was French.
right.
So I didn't learn French or anything. I think so. I just learned English very early on,
Mm,
and that just became my language. And I started thinking in English, and and that changed everything. So
mm,
I can't. And my own mother tongue, I'm really bad at. Like
mm.
I was always bad at it, which is always like, and that's the thing as well. You're right, actually, to point this out, because this is one of the other things as well that stopped me from integrating into Pakistan when I went to Pakistan to live over there for 10 years. My language wasn't as good as others, but it was good enough to express myself and,
Yeah.
talk and stuff like that. But because I didn't have the culture, so I couldn't assimilate to that culture at all. And that's why I'm hesitant to even call myself like Pakistani British or anything. It's like, well, I
Mm,
don't feel like I belong to them,
mm.
because I don't agree with them at all. Like,
Yeah,
even on
yeah.
their own existence, yeah.
Mm,
And that's why, like, if we those people like you're mentioning, who are like first generation, second generation, third generation, that's why they don't feel British, you know.
mhm.
because
Mm.
it's not just a language. Because the thing is, like, English, our language has been become international, so it's not a matter of learning Japanese or learning Chinese or learning Arabic or stuff like that. It's like everyone knows English anyways. It's
Yeah.
not something that you can't get culture from English anymore unless you're in England and you're using the slangs and understand like what the differences of word means. Americanized way of speaking English doesn't get you any, you know,
No, no,
value.
no, not in Chigwell, does it? No.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's why I feel like, I mean, obviously there is concern. Do you think there's ever a good case for mass immigration?
No. I mean, somebody could persuade me, perhaps, but no, not really. Um, I I feel that so much of the discussion is has been for a long time, and we're beginning to break out of this now because people are beginning to tell the truth about it. But so much of it has been um, that, well, you don't like mass immigration because you don't like dark skinned people, you don't like black people, you don't like this, and I mean, I've got a good friend of mine. I mean, I've known him for 45 years, and he's very suspicious of anyone who flies a Union Jack. And he says to me, well, they're just a bit racist, aren't they? And I said, well, I might fly a Union Jack. He goes, oh, not you, but anyone else. And I'm thinking, well,
I
how
have
do he doesn't
t-shirt with
know that?
Union Jack that I wear all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't know that, does he? I mean, there you go. So he'd be completely wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but so much of it has been, there's been this thing. Well, it's all a bit. Anybody complains about immigration, there must be something a bit dodgy about their viewpoints.
Mm,
And I mean, I've been guilty of thinking that about other people myself.
yeah.
But I mean, I don't think that now, but I have in the past. And of course, it was always a lazy trope. You think, oh, yeah,
Mm,
and then you make a sort of a joke about how they're being a bit bigoted. You know, and it's. I mean, part of the thing was one of the reasons I thought we were doing so well was that we had a big. I mean, this is really before my time, but in the 70s, the National Front was. I mean, it was never really popular, but they
yeah.
made a lot of noise. And then there was the skinhead thing, and then there was this thing they called packy bashing.
Yeah.
It's like and
I
that
mean,
sort of
that's the thing I think so that damaged a lot of relations. The
thing.
people
Yeah,
being disconnected. So those generation that would have wanted to integrate.
yeah. Well, of
That's the
course, and
gaps
and
that happen.
and I mean, particularly so. I mean, I've heard this. I mean, and I've read this as well, but I don't know. But I've heard that in places like the Caribbean,
Mm.
um, they would tell them they would tell each other stories where the happy ending was they all sail off to England, you
Oh,
know, sail off to the mother country, and
nice.
it was considered to be the mother country,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I think is it's such a shame really about the West Indians particularly
Mm.
is that they were so loyal, they were
Mm.
proper pro-British, pro-royalist,
Mm.
and and I don't think it's a coincidence that quite a lot of it's probably a generational thing now, but quite a lot of young men in the 70s, 60s, and 70s that were young Caribbean boys were called Winston.
Mm.
You know? and
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
and you're not telling me that that's just a coincidence.
No.
You know that was them saying we want to be accepted so badly. We're going to call our son after your
Mm.
great hero.
Mm.
And it was, and I remember thinking that, I mean, I was just young in the 70s, I was like just a youngster, so I didn't really notice things in the way you would when you're grown up.
Mm.
But if somebody would, I mean, I witnessed people bullying, young black kids and stuff, and I
Mm.
just remember thinking it was horrible,
Yeah.
and, I thought it was horrible and unkind and all the rest of it. But, um, so I think you're right. I think that sort of thing. Because if you think about it, the numbers were, by comparison, so tiny
Yeah.
that it didn't it didn't warrant the backlash that it got. But there were, there were dockers going on strike in support of Enoch Powell, and
mm,
and that sort of thing.
mm.
And the numbers were just tiny compared to what they are
Yeah.
now. Um,
But
so
do you think like do you think that Enoch Powell was right actually, because he was
no,
seeing way ahead in the future, not at that time, but
mm,
he was warning about it, that
mm.
I feel like personally, like I'll tell you what I feel like. I think so he was right, and I think so people dismissed him because they didn't want to intellectually engage with what he was actually trying to put out, right? Because he's being proven to be right. uh Maybe not to that same ferocity, because he wouldn't have predicted that, because he was a man of his time, right? Like even if it's 30 or 20, 30 years, or even if it's like 40 years, it's a changed world right now, right? That was, the internet had not exploded, so there was no social media and stuff, so he couldn't have predicted where this will lead to. He couldn't even have predicted that we would indulge in mass immigration so much, right?
Mm.
But I think so the ethos of what he was saying, I think so he was right. What do you
Well, I
think?
think you see, he's another one of these people where
Hmm.
he was just like a sort of like a high culture Tommy Robinson at the time,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he was pilloried, and I mean it cost him his political career.
Yeah.
He was sort of basically exiled to Northern Ireland, where he spent the
Hmm.
rest of his time as an MP for the Ulster Unionists. But he was one of the brainiest people in Parliament, and he
Hmm.
was a very intelligent man. And if you ever want to, and he also had some real libertarian instincts as well, which endears him to me. If you ever look up his 1973 speech about why people shouldn't have to be made to wear crash helmets on motorcycles, it's really quite something. It's
Hmm.
really quite something. Um, but I remember, he was the thing about him is he was caricatured as just this old racist.
Yeah.
But he spoke 14 languages.
Yeah.
And he was
He spoke,
learning. I
spoke
think he
Urdu as
learned
well, I think so.
Urdu when he was in
Yeah.
his 70s,
Yeah.
and he would go to the local curry shop so he could
Yeah.
try out his Urdu.
Yeah.
It's not as if he thought that um, he wasn't sort of a racist, and he thought that white people were better than
Yeah.
other people. I
He
don't
just
think.
understood that different people are different, and
Yeah,
different cultures are different. Like cultures are not equal, people
yeah,
are not equal. It depends. And it's
mm,
also one thing, I don't know if you notice this as well. I see some of his interviews and stuff. He never defended himself properly, right? So because he wasn't interested in defending himself, that I like he didn't want to prove that he's not a racist,
mm,
right? So he wouldn't say that, oh, I speak this language and I go like, and I have like
yeah,
I have a black friend as well, how do you call me
yeah.
racist, right? So he didn't put out those qualifiers, because intellectually it was beneath him, and he
Yes,
was right.
exactly, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say when you said that. Yeah, yeah. So do I think he was right? I have to concede that I think he was right. Yeah,
Mm,
and it's taken a long time for me to change my mind over this, because I used to read about him, and I used to think, that, and of course, lots of stuff that I read was in the media were from people
mm.
who had a certain viewpoint, and so I kind of took that on board. But I suppose I think he probably was right. Yeah, I think he
And
was.
this is the danger, because not many people are going to look into it, right? Because not many people have the time. Some people don't have the intellectual capacity. Some people are just have the intellectual capacity, but just don't have the interest in
Well,
certain
some people are
things.
just cowardly.
Some people are cowardly. So these narratives that have been built against these people, these lazy narratives, they become a fact then over time.
Mm,
And it makes you wonder, like, because one thing that I want to bring up like on the opposite side of it, right? Because a lot of people are feeling, when I say as well, like people who are comes from culture from which are diametrically opposed, they can never be British because they don't want to be British, right? So which includes a lot of Pakistani Muslims and stuff, because they hate Britain, right? So how can might have passport, like, but they instinctively hate Britain, right?
Mm.
Not all of them, but obviously. But at the same time, we can also see what happens when your government of any country, um, they fail you as a community or as a group of people, right? So, even if we see Liverpool that used to be Tory before,
Mm.
well, if you fail a people, then that's how a lot of the North became Marxist so much. That's how Marxism got in, because England kept on failing them, like
Mm.
not taking them from for granted, right? So these are white British people who became anti-British then, in that sense, because Marxism, the whole ideology of Marxism, is against the monarchy, is against the whole existence of Britain as an independent country, right? And they can cover it up with socialism all they want, right? But that's the essence of communism, right?
Mm.
And in the same way that we can say, like you were saying, the Caribbean people, the West Indians, they used to be pro-British, but where did the failings came of the government and stuff, where they then started becoming more, and in like they're not going towards Marxism, but like a strand of Marxism came in,
Mm.
critical race theory, and that got pumped into it, and they latched onto it. Like obviously they are. I'm not taking away that it's their responsibility as well, like the Marxists up north, or the critical race theory people, or the DEI people and stuff. But what is the fault on the other side as well? Why have we stopped? What has happened even in the past 14 years, right? Like, what efforts have been made by a conservative government to actually be more pro-British?
Mm. Well, they haven't done
Failings
anything.
on both sides, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, um,
Because you don't just wake up and start hating your own people, or start
no,
hating your country where
but
you have like.
there is a strain of people in this country, and I haven't noticed it anywhere else. And I have
Mm,
asked people, if they have the same thing. I was in Greece
mm,
last September, and I was talking to this Greek fella, and he was very knowledgeable. And
mm,
I was saying to him, do you have anybody in Greece? If Greece was playing England, or let's not say England, if Greece was playing Spain
mm.
at football, do you have any Greek people who would want Spain to win? And he
They
was
would
just astonished.
consider them not Greek
Yeah, and
completely.
he was just astonished that I could even ask that.
Yeah,
And I said, because there's people in England that want England to
yeah.
lose. You know,
That blew my mind actually, right?
yeah. And
First
I
time
don't
that
know
I
where
knew.
that comes from. And I
Yeah,
don't know I don't understand what the evolutionary use of that is.
yeah.
Why would you have people in your midst who,
Why would you have your enemies living amongst you? What
yeah,
is the
but
benefit?
self-grown? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not talking about Islamists. I'm talking about white
no,
middle-class
yeah,
English people,
yeah.
you know.
But
And it's,
that's why I brought that up, about that thing as well. That I like narratives become facts over time, right? So you have to see like what has been done to people like Tommy Robinson in our recent times, when you know that there is no fact to support whatever claims are against him. The same that has been done with Enoch Powell over the time, because people were unwilling to intellectually engage with him. This is how the seed of anti-Britishness as well has made into a fact, right? Like saying that Winston Churchill was a racist and he caused the famine and stuff, when the facts point otherwise, that it was, the people over there as well causing issues, right? But it's become such a fact that nobody wants to engage and say, oh, Winston Churchill, the most prominent hero in our modern times of Britain, in British modern times, because that's still comparatively modern for Britain. it was a racist and stuff, right? So when your biggest hero that you have the most relevance to, because
Mm,
it's within your past 3 4 generations, is been shown to you as a fact that he was not a hero but a villain,
mm, mm,
in certain cases, then you start losing that connection, and then
mm.
you
Well,
start
that's deliberate, isn't
feeling.
it? It's deliberate.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
reason they went after Churchill
yeah,
is because they know how we revere him.
yeah,
That's why they went after him.
yeah.
That's why they
But they
went
didn't
after
they didn't just see, they didn't start with him, right? They
him.
started with him like in other countries and stuff, they would do that, especially in India and stuff,
Mm,
you know. But they started, I think so, they started with the kings of old, right?
mm,
The constant bashing of King Henry VIII is so
mm,
common now. Oh yeah, he has so many wives and he
mm.
got them lopped off and stuff. Nothing else anyone talks about, you
No.
know. Nothing of his actually disconnecting, for
Mm,
whatever reason it was,
mm,
him disconnecting England from the Catholic Church
mm,
was
mm,
the biggest coup for this country, right?
mm. Yeah,
It
well,
set them
there's
on
an
a
argument
different
for that.
path,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? No one else would have done it,
Mm,
whatever the reasons might be, right? But people don't engage with that. All the
mm,
past heroes, they started from the back and stuff like that, making them into, oh yeah, Saint George is like from Turkey, like
yeah,
this all
sure,
these sort of things,
that's yeah.
right?
That's become a tradition in itself in a
Yeah,
way. Isn't it? Every St George's Day,
yeah,
well, you have to listen to the tedious leftist.
yeah,
And thinks, oh, St George actually was a Turk, by the
yeah.
way, it's
But I see that like they have disconnect. The reason why I am trying to in this conversation sympathize with them, because I actually don't overall.
mm,
I just hate anyone who is anti-British. It's like, just go off, live on some other fucking island. Then if you want to, like, just get away from here.
yeah.
Let us
I
build
mean, it is a weird
something better.
thing what you were saying
Yeah,
earlier about these people who come here and they've been here 3 generations and they hate the place.
there are
I,
people
I
coming here
couldn't.
actively who hate the country, but they're coming over here.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I
dude,
can't imagine going somewhere to
yeah,
go and live.
hate traveling. I
And,
hate I hate those people. So I'm gonna spend my money, go over there,
yeah,
and I'm gonna
I'm
hate
gonna.
them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the weirdest thing. I mean,
That's it.
um,
Like, you hate being on the beach and you sitting over there. You
yeah,
spend money to go over there and you say, fucking hate this beach. I
yeah, yeah,
fucking hate
yeah,
that sun. I
yeah,
hate the sea. It's like,
yeah,
why are you there then?
yeah. And I'm gonna get all tanned up just to show
Yeah,
them how much
yeah,
I hate. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So that's a weird thing. I mean, because you'd think, wouldn't you, if you hated the country? I mean, you'd think if you hated the country, that you go somewhere where you like it.
yeah,
You just and that you might. It might be better for your own mental health if you went somewhere that you liked rather
yeah,
than somewhere that you
yeah.
hated.
Unless you had malicious intent,
Of course, yeah, and
right?
but the thing is, that has to be fairly malicious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To is I
In
suppose.
most cases, it is. In most cases, it is, right? So it's not just malicious intent only. It's also like a lot of what I've seen, like Pakistanis, their intent is sort of like, oh, they came to our country and robbed our country, so
Mm,
that's what we're doing over there. We're
mm,
going to rob them of their benefits and whatever stuff like that.
mm,
Which it just feels like, dude, you're not living for yourself. Like,
mm,
what are you even doing? What is the whole point of it? Like, move on.
mm,
Nothing of it was done to you personally, so just move on. But the reason why I'm trying, sometimes I try to, when I'm sitting on my own and thinking, sympathize with the left part of it, and thinking that, they're built that way because the government has failed them, right? The reason why I'm thinking like that is because that means there's a way of getting them back,
right, right.
right? And we have
How
to
would
sort
that
of
look?
think that.
How would you get them back? Because there is the great spectre of the thing that you often talk about, which we haven't even mentioned yet, which is Islam.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it seems to be, I mean, rightly or wrongly or whatever it is, it does seem to be is that Islam is driving so much of this,
oh
and
yeah,
I mean, I'm just guessing because I don't know, but what I'm thinking is that you know, Pakistanis who hate this country but live here, it doesn't matter where they live. They're just soldiers of Islam or whatever it is,
yeah,
and so they're just so that is their allegiance,
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
country isn't, and even
Yeah.
Pakistan isn't their allegiance. It's actually
Yeah.
just Islam. But
Yeah. I don't think so. We fix anything by concentrating on them being good people or becoming good people, right? Or appeasing to them. As I think so, that's a case that eventually down the line it has to come that there should be no immigration from those places, or additionally there should be no giving of citizenships to just
yeah,
Tom, Dick, and Muhammad.
mm,
So
mm,
it's like you have to be careful about like who you giving the citizenships to, and like probably ending dual nationality as well.
mm.
But I think so. This is why I'm saying like a lot of people are saying about Islam. It's a the part is like exposing the truths about Islam so that people understand who they're supporting, right? So and then the left sort of like keeps waking up. But at the same time, you have to. I think so. You have to give a positive message, something for people to cling on to, or to get to the combining thread back to, or to
Who are
fight
you aiming
for.
the message at? Who are you aiming the message at?
I think so. The native population,
Right. Okay. Yeah. So,
right?
yeah. Okay.
A
Yeah.
native population and those who want British and the loyalist, right? So even those who are not native born over here and stuff, but who want to be British, or who we can grab back. So it's
Yeah.
basically the left, the redeeming of the left, you know,
Mm,
and that has to come through giving them something. We can't just keep on reacting
mm,
against things,
mm,
right? Because that just become hatred, hatred, hatred over
mm,
time,
mm,
and then it goes towards the ethno nationalist route, and then the left will not assimilate to that
mm,
because
mm,
their minds don't work like that. So you have to give some positive thing. There has to be like a cultural movement where you expose all the lies that have been told about Britain, and also celebrate British values and culture and like traditions, and like bring those old festivals back, make them even bigger. In all the towns we have like little old some festivals and stuff like that, right? Give
mm,
them more prominence for people to say, "Ah, see, like these are people of my country, like, oh, look at these weirdos, they are
mm.
part of me,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it sort of bring you that, like, this is my country sort of thing. And America does that, or used to do that a lot, right? That's how they had these connections.
Mm.
um just being proud of your country and stuff, and also probably reviving Christianity. And
Yeah.
people
I think there's
hate
something
me
in that.
saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
People hate,
I'm not
like,
someone.
yeah,
I'm not someone with a faith myself, but I do
yeah,
feel that there's. Um, and I didn't used to sort of agree with this thing because I used to go with the sort of atheists who said that
mm,
you don't have to believe in God to be a good person.
yeah,
And I think if you're
being good
exceptional,
without God, yeah,
I think if you're exceptional, that's probably true.
yeah,
But most people are not exceptional.
no,
And and I think just if you to go back to the 50s or the 60s, you know, pretty much everybody would describe themselves as being patriotic, and pretty
mm,
much everybody would have described themselves as being Christian. You know,
yeah,
and most people would have gone to church, and
yeah,
they would have just done it out of habit. And they might not
yeah,
even have believed it. But I think these things seep into your consciousness
yeah.
in a way.
Do you feel like when you were growing up, like that was the case as well? And the positive effect of that would be, it didn't matter whether you believed in God or not, because the Church of England has never been one of the really strict sort of Christian churches
No.
anyways. But it felt like a community, the sense of community, and the sense of togetherness, and the sense of like, okay, yeah, we are one people, right? And the disconnect from that has disconnected people from the
Yeah, I think it
community.
has, and I'm not the best advocate for sort of
No, neither am
community
I.
myself. Actually, it's I remember that there was a program on the television, 15, 20 years ago about British people going to France and French people coming to England, and all the French
Mm,
people coming to England were just coming here for a job for a
mm,
particular reason, but all the British people were going over to France to try and gain some sort of feeling of community, which we felt we'd lost here.
mm,
And
wow,
and
yeah,
I sympathise with that, but at the same time, I would never been one of those people who wanted to go to some small French village and start ingratiating myself with the mayor and
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
locals. Because mostly because, and that's my sort of libertarian nature, is I don't want
mm,
everyone to know my business.
yeah,
But I do understand that I ought to sort of dial that back a bit, and
yeah.
there is some definite pleasure in being part of a community. It definitely
Do
is
you
there.
feel like over the years, the external dangers that have been made apparent over the years have made you feel like, yeah, you actually do need community, because when shit hits the fan,
Mm.
and you better not you better have a community that is your community, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
Mm.
like, you know what I mean, like, you can't just have a community of people who are from different countries
Mm.
and different cultures and don't talk to each other and stuff. You better have a community with a shared vision, sort of who you are, and
Well, I
your
think that,
shared
yeah, I
values
mean,
and
I
stuff.
think at the moment I'm still thinking of it in an intellectual sense rather than a
Mm,
gut feeling.
yeah.
Because I mean, my when I grew up, it was the bonds of community were always already beginning to 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 loosen.
A bit, yeah.
I mean, I my parents moved down from London when I was 8 years old, and
Mm,
my dad had a good job in the city, and so
mm,
we were down from London's type
mm,
people, and so what they were able to buy a bigger house, and
mm,
you know, and you know, and my dad worked in the city, and and so we were kind of the early sort of commuters. Well, not that
mm,
early, but when the city started to
yeah.
become rejuvenated again in the 80s,
Mm,
we weren't local
yeah.
to where we are now, but um, so we weren't we didn't grow up in that
Mm,
community. So it would have been slightly different
yeah.
had we been from here,
Mm,
which we weren't. Um, it's a sort of an intellectual need, I think, rather than a gut feeling for me.
mm, yeah. I mean, I feel like, because it used to be an intellectual thing for me, but it has become over probably around COVID, and then
Yeah.
on, like, it's become very stronger gut feeling, like the need for community. Not for me personally, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not the best advocate for it, because I can do without community and stuff. I can go
Mm,
live in the mountains on my own.
mm,
I'll be just fine, because that's the kind of person that I am, right?
mm,
The books are my friend. Like, I'm that kind of a
mm,
nerd, so but I could, because of the nature, which I can't say, like, of my work and stuff, and I was the people that I was coming in contact with, I saw like how detrimental it is for human beings not to be in a community as a whole, right? Exceptions granted, like myself, an exception, you as exception and stuff, but the rules are not made for exceptions, right? They're made for general. And
yeah.
I saw that need of community. It wasn't there, and it opens up your eyes to a lot of things that has been happening for a very long time with the advent of care homes, right? And putting
Mm,
your family over there and stuff
yeah.
like that. And you see these older people, and they just will talk with you about anything, because they're just looking for you know
Yeah.
sort of conversation and stuff. And in a community, in a tight knit community, they wouldn't need to go out of their way. That
Mm,
I check up on my neighbors and stuff like that, because you know we're good with each other and stuff. It's just making sure everyone is okay, if anything, talk with them or whatnot. Like, you connected that way. You might not need it, but someone might need it. So if you think from that, for me it's sort of like that becomes, takes me away from intellectual to practical, right? So
mm,
I
mm,
say I might not need it, but someone I love might need it, right?
mm,
Someone I care about might need it. They might not be in my direct community, but if I don't indulge in community or advocate for it, then the community for the whole world, or for the whole country, starts going down, and they would be affected by it,
mm,
right? And people who really need it would be affected by it. That's where I've gone from just an intellectual exercise to seeing like, okay, it is needed. And that's why I'm leaning on Christianity a lot these days, because I feel like it's the easiest way to bring a lot of values back that are needed, and the sense of community back. You know, I might, I
I think
don't
you
believe
might be
in
right.
God, but
Yeah. When you first came here, were you surprised by how irreligious the English were?
no, no, because the thing was, I was an ex-Muslim. I came here because I left the religion, right? So that
Yeah,
was a good thing for me.
yeah, yeah,
The thing that I was surprised about is a lot of people said they were atheist, but they didn't have a good reason why,
yeah,
and
mm,
that annoyed me, because I was like, look, I went through 6 years
yeah,
of mental exercise and stuff before I finally left Islam,
mm,
and you're just saying, I'm not, I don't believe in God is shit in it. I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? It's like, that's not an argument. Yeah, there's no intellectual rigor in there. Like, what is going on? That's what I was surprised at, and that's when I started feeling like, oh shit, this is a problem, because
mm,
this is the people not knowing of themselves anymore,
yeah, yeah,
and this is going to become more and more problem. I didn't think to link it with the loss of community, because I came from, I had been living for 10 years prior to that in Karachi, which has
mm,
25 million people. It's a metropolitan, powerhouse, or in that sense. So I didn't care about community. Right? I just wanted to get away from people anyways.
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is
But
the
over
nature of
time it
city
changed.
people, isn't it? City people are
Yeah.
less, I tend to be less open because they're crowded and they want to
Yeah.
keep their personal space, don't they? So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, it's did you know that woman Ayan Hirsi Ali? You've heard of
Yeah.
her?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she was a critic of Islam, wasn't she? And she's
Yeah.
really
She was
gone
an
through the
expert.
mill. Yeah,
Yeah.
and but she's recently said that she's become a Christian
Yeah.
because she rejected Islam
Mm.
and then she had no faith, and suddenly that wasn't right for her either. And she
Yeah.
thought, I need something.
Yeah.
I don't want Islam, but I need something.
Yeah.
So, um, I just thought,
It's funny because it's the same amount, around the same time that I was started feeling like that as well, right?
right, yeah,
And I had been thinking about Christianity for a very, very long time, because, and it is to do with, like, when I have started thinking about things outside of myself, right, leaving myself aside, and not like, making myself the center of my own thoughts. That's when I've been thinking about community and what the people need rather than what I would like them to need, right?
mm, mm,
And I've been thinking about Christianity for a long, long time because of that reason, right? Because I was like, well, the thing is, we've had this exercise of atheism, right? We've had this liberal, materialistic atheist exercise. It's not working. It's
mm,
making people miserable. And it's good for some people, the exceptions, who can think their way out of it, who can, but it's not good for the society. And
mm,
there's no way of conceding to there's no harm in conceding to the utility of Christianity in that sense, if it's good for people, right? Why should I remain selfish in that sense? I just, like, don't want to admit it. That's why I've been thinking so much about it. And once she actually said it out loud, that's why I was like, yeah,
mm,
I was saying it like a bit before her
yeah,
started saying it out loud, but it gave me more of a confidence, and it sort
mm,
of also showed me like, yeah, she's right, and I
mm,
was right, like, to lean on this, because there's a reason for it. I rather have the Christian God in our society back. I rather have Jesus back than what we are now, and
yeah.
what we
Well,
are going
we're in
to be.
trouble. We're definitely in trouble. And
Yeah.
I,
And I
I
feel like
can't
our
pretend to.
souls are in trouble, right?
Yeah,
Like, I feel that, like, whether you believe in the religious soul or not,
mm,
the essence of humanity is at stake. I feel like, people are losing their humanity, and the more we go towards AI as well,
mm,
that's what I'm fearing. People not knowing of themselves as human beings, like the essence of why we are here, our connections and stuff, and they start going into something like AI,
Mm.
that's gonna eat us up.
Yeah,
We're gonna be gone.
yeah. That's another threat, isn't it? As
Mm,
if we haven't got enough, you know.
yeah,
But I think the other thing as well is that in order to combat Islam, you can't combat Islam with atheism.
that was my whole point. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Very
know,
good. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
whether you agree with Islam or not,
Mm,
there's millions of people out there who do agree with it and believe it and live it every day, and
yeah.
and is the focal point of their life. And
Yeah.
you know, what are we gonna combat that with? Television and mobile
Liberals are
phones.
not gonna. A liberal mind is never going to combat that. That
No.
sort of dogmatism, it
Mm,
can't, because it's like the liberalism is the reason why we still have communism and we didn't get rid of it, right? Because like, oh, but they should be allowed to think
mm,
because it's their thoughts and stuff,
mm,
right? That's the sort of, but like if they're being a Muslim and like, they're just keeping in their moderate and stuff. So what's wrong with it?
mm.
Well, the thing that's wrong with it is that you don't understand that religion, right? It's
Yeah.
not as if like the moderates are not killing you. It's that the moderates are keeping alive the religion out of which jihadis and Islamists come about, that will kill you, right? So if let's imagine if I was still a moderate Muslim, my kid, there's no guarantee that my kid would not be a jihadi
Mm,
if they read the Quran properly,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
liberalism cannot see this point. They
Mm,
go around with these things. Yeah, but like, there's peaceful people, but it's like it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about ideology that has to be terminated, right? But that cannot happen with, like you said, with atheism. Atheism is a opposition of religion, right? It's not for anything.
mm, mm.
Humanism was supposed to give some guidance towards that, but look at what happened with humanism. Obviously that's going to happen. It
Yeah.
became woke. Why it became woke? Because once you make your worldview into materialistic worldview, when only you're just the atoms and you're just made of the atoms, and
Mm,
is what you want in life and like what is now that happens, then why should you not allow a man to become a woman and call themselves women?
mm. Yes.
Atheism doesn't have an argument against it, apart from saying, oh, it's not the reality, and so, oh, is there reality?
Mm.
If there's no God, there's no consequences afterwards. It's just their life that they're living.
Yeah, I mean,
What
I
problem do
don't,
you have then?
I don't really have any theological arguments for this because
Yeah,
I'm out of my depth, but I just know that something is quite obviously wrong. We're
yeah,
in real trouble,
yeah.
and
And we
we
need
seem
something.
to
Yeah,
we seem to be. I mean, uh, correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation, but we appear to be really in the shit because we
mm,
we seem to have, to give it a sort of religious phrase, we have turned away from God.
yeah,
And I say that as somebody who doesn't really have a faith myself, but
yeah,
but I'm kind of exploring it. But
yeah.
it's
But
uh,
you start feeling it, right? Like, it makes me wonder why the most of the philosophers and thinkers of the Enlightenment era, they did not endorse atheism, you know,
mm, mm,
especially John Locke and people like that, right? There must have been a reason for it. They
yeah,
saw this, that there is still a need for it. It might, you don't have to, because you can still have a structure, and within that structure you can have a loose connection with God, right? So you can make God into your own personal God, sort of a thing, but still have a structure where most people are held together, which Christianity was doing. It would be better if we had a better structure rather than Christianity, because without the baggage and stuff like that, to give people, you know a proper message. But that would mean like it would take years and years and years of how long it took Christianity itself, right?
mm,
Years and years and years of thinkers and stuff like that creating something like Christianity for the future. But right now, the fix, I can't get away from this fact that right now, the immediate fix is going back to the church.
Yeah,
But
I think
then look at our
I think
church
there's
then.
something else as well. Is that most people are not Marxists.
No.
Most people are not that interested.
Yeah.
But most people are aware of Marx and
Yeah.
aware of the basic general idea of communism.
Mm,
Um, and it's one of those things where they think, well, I'm not really a communist, but they had a few good points.
yeah.
And one of them, of course, which um, is that when Marx said religion is the opiate of the masses.
Mm,
So that's probably what they probably think is one of his good points.
yeah.
And in fact, it's actually, it's actually a really bad point. But
Yeah.
it's seeped into
Because
the
him not understanding
yeah.
what it actually is, right? And
Mm,
that's how Marx itself becomes a religion itself. So it's like you contradicting
exactly.
your
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But do you think there's a lot of people feeling like that? Like that there is, but the thing is as well, like look at our church, right? Church of England.
yes,
So,
must say,
so part of my idea of cultural movement is also to include a church which is not Church of England anymore,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, the
Uh,
Church of England is it is. I think the Church of England is controlled opposition in the
yeah,
same way
like
that
in the Christian sense, yeah,
in the same way that the Tory party is controlled
yeah,
opposition,
yeah,
for Marxism.
yeah.
You know,
I feel like they're controlled, but like not by someone, right?
Mm.
It's sort of like they're controlled by. They're trying to conserve something. They're trying to conserve. Like I feel like the Conservative Party is trying to conserve liberalism, right?
Yeah, yes,
Which is a stupid place for them to be in because they're
yeah,
trying to conserve liberalism, while the supposed liberals in the Labour Party, they become mental. They've
mm,
gone way at the deep end, right? So that's why there's a vacuum and there's no actual conservative.
mm.
The same thing I think so has happened to our monarchy as well, you know, and I'm like delving a bit into treason right now, but that is what's happened to with our kings as well, right? With our monarchy, because they have left their connection to God,
Mm.
right? They have started indulging in things which are beyond. They always did, the royalty,
Mm.
but they was always connected with Christianity. But the further that they've started going apart from it, now the Church of England is just supporting their mental derangements.
Mm.
And that's why I feel like not only one institution has let us down, but all the institutions have let us
Yeah, all
down.
of them. They're
Yeah.
all of them. Yeah,
And that's why
I mean,
the culture movement has to start from like the people who are feeling that, but who don't just want to go against something, who wants to give a positive view for the
yeah,
future, and that should include a church which is disconnected from
mm.
Church of England.
Yeah. I think that I think there's yeah. I mean, the Church of England is not part of any solution at all. I don't
No,
think. Because I mean,
no.
it's not hardly
True,
even
what
a
it is.
church. It's
Yeah,
just a landowner,
yeah,
as
yeah,
far as I can tell. It's
yeah.
just a landowner. But um, it's funny because I was on just talking about the institutions. I was talking to my mum the other day, and I kind of sort of I talk her head off about things sometimes, and she's because she doesn't get an awful lot of conversation about deep things like this.
Yeah,
She does like having a good old chat about this, and so
yeah.
and I take her copies of the Light newspaper and tell her to
Mm,
watch GP News and and all these
yeah,
sort of things, and I realised the other day I was sort of um, seeming even by my own standards, seeming somewhat conspiratorial uh, with her. And I was thinking, and she was sort of saying, "Well, why would they do that?" And I was thinking, "Well, I don't really want to give her the full
yeah.
both barrels about all this, but because it's for 75-year-old woman, it's a bit much
Mm,
really." Um, but it just the thing about the institutions is that, and one of the things that I think people need to the way they need to look at this is that none of what happens is an accident.
mm,
The things that are happening, the institutions are against us
mm,
purposely.
yeah,
So everything that happens, somebody who's making the decision wants the thing that is happening to
mm,
happen.
yeah,
And this goes all the way down to the grooming gangs.
yeah,
It goes all the way down to that
yeah,
because, and it's a hard thing to say,
mm,
but there are people who wanted that to happen.
mm, mm,
There are people who wanted those underage girls to be gang raped by 10 blokes in a room.
mm,
I mean, it's a hard thing to say.
mm.
It's a very hard thing to say. But if they wanted to stop the grooming gangs, they could have stopped it tomorrow. If they want to stop illegal immigration, they could stop it tomorrow. They just
Let
don't
me
want to.
let me try to switch that a bit, right, and see what you think, because I think the other side, which I'm going to present now, I don't think so. Is the institution that are against? I don't think so. The institutions are inherently against the people. I think so. The institutions are self-preservate,
Mm,
preservating, right? They
yeah.
want to preserve themselves,
Mm,
and in doing so, they become against the people. But not, they don't set out to be like that, right? So that's why they won't be against everyone and stuff. So
mm,
even though they would not want grooming gangs to rape girls, but to maintain themselves and to have not have their own incompetence be shined upon, they go into this self-preservation mode where they try to hide those things, right? And then the bad faith actor comes within the institution who do want that to happen, right? So the Islamist and those people would come into it, right, without their information, without their knowledge. So that you would have like the police departments whose advisors are Islamist,
mm, mm,
right? They are the ones who are being malicious and stuff. But it's not like everyone in that institution would not be malicious. It's just that because the institution's primary focus has become every institution separately, right? Self-preservation. It's opened itself to bad faith actors coming in and manipulating it, to doing things that would otherwise make you think that the institution wants is against you, right?
yeah. I mean,
I have
I
a
think.
feeling there's a bit of that going on as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I say the institutions, I'm not saying if there's a building, if there's a
Yeah,
building
yeah,
with 1,000 people in it, that
yeah.
950 of them are
Mm,
definitely working against us.
mm,
But there will be some people who
yeah,
are making the decisions, and
yeah.
everybody else just wants to keep their job, so they
Yeah,
just
that's
go
the
along
thing.
with it.
That's the thing that I'm trying to say. Like, because
Yeah.
you open yourself up to bad faith actors, right?
Mm,
Marxist and Islamist.
mm.
That's why we have an infiltration into our institutions for the past 50 or so years. Because the institutions just became about preserving themselves, their employees, their budgets, and their
Yeah, exactly.
stuff,
Yeah, I mean, the
right?
NHS is a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
the,
It
the
doesn't even want to
NHS is
discuss it because
yeah,
it wants to save itself as NHS.
the NHS's first priority is to sustain itself.
Hmm. Which
You
is
know,
stupid. Stupid.
public health is very much a secondary concern.
Yeah,
It's very much over there. You
yeah.
know, it's
Because
nice to have. We'll have some hospitals, and
yeah,
we'll make some people better, and but that's not the main focus.
yeah,
The main focus is we want to get more money from the government so we can all get paid, and which is why we want diversity and inclusion officers on 75 grand a year
yeah.
instead
Obviously,
of three
why
nurses
not?
at 25.
Yeah.
No.
But also the reason why I'm saying is as well, like when during the COVID times as well, we saw like someone was pointing anything out, GPs would come out and just support the vaccines and support everything that the government is doing and stuff like that, even though they might not think it's right or not, because their concern was not public health.
Mm,
Their concern was self-preservation.
mm,
And oh shit, this information should not come out, because if it comes out, that means they're going to investigate us. They
mm,
might reduce our budget, we might have problem, you know. And but internally they might admit this is a bad thing that has happened. Personally, would they
yes.
would say like, well, we can't admit that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I, like, yeah, that is a problem. That's why you should not have charities, you should not have any institution which go beyond their remit, right? It should be like, okay, you're a task force.
Mm.
There's no home office, right? We have a border force and it's a task force.
Yeah.
These are your tasks and
Mm.
you do these,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
you have people to perform those tasks. You
Yeah.
don't have these managerial classes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wonder about institutions because I think it's Jordan Peterson is always saying that all institutions tend towards corruption.
Yeah, because
Um,
of this reason, because they
yeah.
become self-preservation. Yeah,
So it makes you wonder whether all institutions ought to have a bit of a shelf life.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know how you do that, but
yeah.
for instance, the the police force. Now they didn't do anything about the grooming gangs. They didn't do anything
No.
about it, and probably for the reasons that you've said,
Mm,
um, and also probably in the deepest, darkest place, also for the reasons I've said. But
yeah,
um, but there's no. The only way that you can get them to do anything about the grooming gangs and to admit what's happened before is you have to change everybody within it.
yeah,
The whole thing needs to be cleaned out, from the middle management upwards,
yeah.
and then you get people saying, well, our first priority is not community cohesion.
Mm,
Our first priority is to stop little girls getting gang raped.
yeah,
And if you stop little girls from getting gang raped, you're going to keep your pension
yeah,
rather than if
yeah,
you just ignore little girls getting gang
yeah.
raped, you'll lose it.
You have to make those people responsible.
Mm.
You have to hold them accountable for what happened. Like, there's no way of glossing over this,
Mm.
right? It's like, I'm sorry, I don't give a shit what you thought at that time.
Mm.
You had the responsibility and you
Mm.
let this happen, and
Yeah.
you helped prison time.
Mm. Yeah.
I would do prison time for all of them,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
As harsh as
Yeah.
the prison time for those who did the grooming and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
rape.
Because in a way they're worse.
Yeah,
In a way
because they
they are
could have stopped
worse.
and they didn't,
Yeah.
and
Because
they hid it.
you
And
know.
then I would also go after the local counselors and stuff who
Yep.
hid
Yep.
that information,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
And the social
They
workers.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Um.
unless you hold them accountable, we cannot move on,
Mm.
right? We can't just forgive people like that.
Yeah.
We'll forgive it once you've admitted that you're wrong and you
Mm.
paid your dues to the
Mm.
society for your mistakes,
Mm.
right? Whether deliberate or not, for your mistake, unless you have repented, how can you ask for salvation? Like,
Mm.
you're not even repenting and
Mm.
you're asking the society to forgive
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I mean, this is what people have been doing about COVID, isn't it? Is about the whole
Exactly.
COVID. Is
Yeah.
they're
Why
saying,
can't
oh
forgive you?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
well, we all made mistakes, didn't we? Well, no, we didn't
Yeah.
all make mistakes. You did.
Yeah.
You made a mistake
Yeah.
because
Admit the mistake,
yeah,
pay the price for it,
yeah,
then I'll forgive you.
yeah,
Show proper repentance,
yeah,
show like grief over it.
mm,
I will forgive you then.
yeah,
I'll be
because
fine with
yeah,
forgiving those people.
mm,
But
yeah, because it was you who violated the Nuremberg Code. It was
yeah,
you who violated the Declaration of Human Rights.
yeah,
And it was you who said that the vaccine was safe when you knew it wasn't.
yeah,
It was you who did that. It wasn't,
yeah,
it wasn't the people screaming saying don't take the vaccine.
yeah.
And
But that's
when
the
you
thing.
when you started slagging off all the anti-vaxxers,
Yeah,
it was they were
yeah,
those were people trying to warn you.
yeah.
You know,
And they're still doing it. There's
yeah,
the whole liberal elite class is still doing it. A lot of
mm,
atheists are doing it, and it just pisses me off.
mm,
That's why I've like just disassociated with a lot of atheist groups and stuff, because it's like, well, you guys just don't get it, because you're in self-preservation as well. You're
mm,
in the self-preservation mode of science, so
mm,
you cannot have anyone argue anything against the science,
mm,
because that is your god now, and that will crumble down, right?
yeah,
I So this is the problem. Like, every institution is selfish, self-preservation mode. Every individual is selfish, their own self-preservation mode. People are not, I'm trying, but I don't think like people want to come together to do an effort for cultural movement
mm.
because of this overriding feeling, you know
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Not to-
I've noticed that the posts that you've put out about you know a positive vision and stuff. And I do think that it is attractive to people. I think what is the problem is on in a sort of wider political sense is that the political system is a stitch up.
Yeah,
Is that people, the small parties can't get anywhere.
that's why
Partly
I don't
it's
think there's a
partly it's because
yeah.
they won't. Partly it's because they won't build an alliance. Partly it's that,
Yeah,
and also because you get these people, and I'm not saying that these people are. There's anything wrong with the Lawrence Foxes or the
mm,
David Curtins or the William Claustons of SDP.
mm,
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these guys. I'm sure they're perfectly
yeah,
nice guys, but they're figureheads, and when it comes down to personalities, it shouldn't be about personalities. It should be
yeah,
about the movement,
yeah,
and the, I'm not even saying something as shallow as it's their ego, but I think there is something in that. There's something
yeah.
about
I
ego.
mean, the thing is, like, we have all these personalities, but we don't have a movement to go with them, right?
Mm,
And this is why I've been talking about the cultural movement, because I think so. Lawrence Fox is very interesting as well, because he's already said this before as well. I think so. He said it that the way forward is not politics; it is cultural,
mm,
right?
mm,
So I think so. He's thinking on those lines for a while now. That even though he has a political party, that's not the answer.
mm,
You
mm,
have to build the foundations for people to actually want to vote for such a party or something like in the future. That's and he is, I think so, he's the one who's the most open to people coming together and stuff.
mm. Although I
So
have
that's,
heard from other people
yeah,
that
but just say that it's
I've heard from other
not
people
that hard. People
that
need
he
to come
never turns
together.
up for his alliance meetings either. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
this is what I'm saying is that the
But that's the thing,
personalities
because
completely
it's
count.
a political alliance, right? So that's why he probably doesn't turn up, because he doesn't think politics is the way forward.
Yeah, maybe.
Because there's
Yeah.
no, like, because I don't think so there's any point of UKIP reform, uh reclaim or whatever, or other parties coming together and putting up a platform, because they have so many figureheads, right? They will
Mm,
always bicker with each other. They
mm,
will not put up a positive front for people, and people also will think that, oh, this is how we fix Britain. Or we just get a party which is not Tory and Labour, and they
mm,
come in and it fixes Britain. It's like, no, no, no. The problems are deeper, right?
yeah.
The problem is that we are fucked as people.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
can't be fixed with politics. It
Yeah.
has to be
Yeah.
cultural.
We've got all these rotten institutions as well, so it won't make any
Yeah,
difference whether the
yeah,
party changes or not.
yeah. Unless
Yeah.
we have a culture movement where
Mm,
you give people something back, and from them come out the leaders and stuff.
mm,
They are the only ones who are going to act in a way that is going to change those institutions completely, where like they refocus those institutions. Okay, it's not self-preservation of your institution, it's self-preservation of the country that you're after, right? So
mm,
there's those individual like budget like that you holding on to and stuff like that, they don't matter anymore. So the whole way of how we distributing, how treasury is distributing funds, is
mm.
how we're going to change institutions. A lot of it is going to change by that, you know but I just don't feel like politics is the way. I think so, just
Yeah, there's
that.
no vote. I don't think there's any voting our way out of this. I
No.
mean, one of the things I've been trying to sort of encourage people to do is to stop following the rules. Stop following the rules
Hmm.
because the
Yeah,
rules and the laws are made to advantage the people at the top.
yeah.
Now,
And support each other in not following the rules as
well,
well.
exactly. Now,
Don't switch
and,
up.
and as much as I hate to admit it, we have to take a leaf out of the Islamic book
Yeah,
way in that those guys who are chanting for Palestine every weekend
Hmm.
in London, they're not following the rules.
No, they
You know,
blatantly not following the rules.
they're not following the rules, and they know that they don't have to follow the rules because they know that the police are afraid of them,
Yeah,
and they know that the police can't do anything.
yeah.
Now, they seem like a massive force.
Hmm.
If there's 100,000 people, I mean, there's only 130,000 police officers in the entire country.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so if there's 100,000 people in London, what is there,
Yeah,
50,000 policemen in London or something like that?
yeah,
You know, They're
And
already outnumbered 2-1.
see, this is the reason why I'm talking about the cultural movement so much. It's like you can't tell me that out of 65 million people, there aren't at least 5 million patriots in this country,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
You just need a platform to bring all of them together, right? You need a consensus of what we want so that we can, a place where the frustrations are articulated properly, solutions are put forward of how to achieve them, and then group them together to achieve them. Because even if we start from like a million people, right, out of 65 million, that's nothing.
Mm.
When people start seeing that there is we can do something, something is in our control,
Mm.
right, then it will grow more and more and more, and that's how we
Yeah.
change it. We don't
I,
change it through
I
politics.
think sometimes as well, you kind of you have to be a bit realistic about how things change because
Hmm,
myself and other people have. I mean, for instance, I never went hard on the vaccine because I'm
hmm,
not a scientist. I didn't
yeah,
know. I
yeah,
thought the vaccine was probably all right,
yeah, yeah.
but what I objected to was the
The
compulsion.
forceful nature, yeah, yeah,
That's
compulsion.
what I objected to, and I just
Yeah,
thought I have to. I'm not agreeing to that because of that.
hmm, yeah,
Um, but I mean, it turns out that maybe the vaccine isn't all right,
hmm,
actually.
yeah.
But the thing is, there's been people banging away about this for 3.5 years, and they were
But they
shouting
make
into the
some money.
wilderness to begin with.
Yeah,
And they probably thought at the time this is never going to change. But they
yeah,
kept at it. They kept at it. And
yeah,
4 years down the line, you are beginning to see. I mean,
yeah,
the thing is, the narrative doesn't necessarily collapse. It
yeah,
crumbles. It
yeah,
crumbles. Bits fall
yeah,
off it,
yeah,
and and in 5 years' time, you're not going to find a single person.
yeah,
You won't find a single person who ever says they supported the lockdowns,
yeah.
and it's
But
galling
yeah,
to us
yeah,
because you think, well, I was
mm,
saying it at the time, and all these
yeah,
and you'll call us
yeah,
anti-vax and morons.
yeah.
But
But and
once
this is on the same.
enough time has passed,
Yeah,
they'll
yeah,
feel confident to say, "Oh well, I never believed it.
yeah.
Oh, I never believed it. Oh, I was always against it." When they know they weren't.
And this is on what I'm like. That's why I'm saying it, because the elections are too close for it to the solution to be politics, right? They are too close.
Yeah, yeah,
So it could be that we start seeing the problem being fixed in the elections afterwards, start
mm,
being fixed. But this is a generation, like, program.
mm,
This is like 20-30 years program. So this
mm,
cultural movement it has to start now, but it will take time, and people
yeah,
have to be patient with it. And
mm,
the more younger people that we get into it, reconnect them with their country, because we can't ask young people to care about Britain if they can't buy homes, they
mm,
can't buy
yeah,
find good jobs. They don't have a sense of themselves. Them calling themselves English or having a St. George flag means like they're racist.
mm,
you know what are we giving them? Just their skin color, right?
yeah,
So if that's what we concern, like if that's all we're giving, because politics right now
mm,
has only those options:
mm,
either you hate your skin color or you love your skin color too much, right? And then that's destructive.
mm,
So that's what I think. Like, cultural movement and bigger names need to really come together with it, like
mm.
form an alliance,
What
form,
do you what
you
do
know.
you make of that thing that was about a month ago when they started going on about conscription?
That's the same thing. It's like, why are you asking people to fight when you
Yeah.
haven't given them something to fight for? Like,
See, why
okay,
do you think they said that then? Because it seemed
I
to
think
me
so. I
because
think so. They are afraid. I think so. I think so. N- the army is not as fucked as we think it is. It is fucked
mm,
because there's certain individuals in there that is fucking it up, right?
mm,
But I think so. I think so. Behind the scenes, people know that there's something fucked, right?
mm,
But obviously, Labour is in self-preservation. Tories are in self-preservation, so they won't admit what's
mm,
wrong.
mm, mm,
It's same like the army and stuff. I think so. They know there's something wrong, but they just don't know how to fix it.
mm,
So I think so. That was a way of them trying to understand, like, is it fixable? And
Do
if
you
they
think
see a
that
negative,
they put those feelers out to try and get some feedback?
yeah, that's what I think it was.
Yeah.
And they got negative response, so then now they're saying, okay, maybe we'll lower the standards for non-nationals to be in the army,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
rather
Mm,
rather than saying, oh, our people don't want to fight for our own country. Where have we gone wrong?
mm, yeah.
They haven't taken that step. They're taking, okay,
Yeah.
well, let's make it easier for other people. Like, we will have British jihadis now
Mm,
in our army, right? Like,
yeah.
British soldiers going,
What
Allahu Akbar, and blowing themselves off, like, oh, yeah, so British of you.
what could go wrong?
Yeah,
What could go wrong? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but there does seem to be something about the political class. Just the as one of my Twitter followers calls them, the long remainers.
Hmm.
They just they won't engage with why they lost the referendum.
Yeah.
Just like in America, the Democrats won't engage as to
Mm.
why they lost to Trump.
Yeah.
They won't engage. They're just,
Yeah.
oh, these people are all tossers. That's why they
Yeah.
lost. You know,
But
and
that's the thing, like, on the other side, like, but it's just reactions against them, right?
mm,
If you give some like, on the right, there's just reaction against the left rather than the right giving a vision,
mm,
right?
yeah,
If you give a vision, then these left, that these long remainers and
mm,
these
mm,
loonies, they become loonies then over
yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
And people just dismiss them, just right. The actual white nationalist people,
Mm,
everyone would disregard them, right?
mm.
But you have to give a vision.
Yeah, I think a positive thing. I mean, I think there's I think this I think it does have legs. I mean, you've got to. You don't have to be stupidly jingoistic, but you just have to approach it you approach it in a sensible way. I mean, compared to compared to most societies in the world, this one's a pretty good one.
Yeah,
You
very
know,
good
you
one.
know. But that's not to say that others. I mean, if I was to go to, I don't know, just as an example, if I was to go to Kampala in Uganda, I
Hmm.
would probably be quite surprised by how nice it is.
Yeah.
Probably,
Yeah.
well, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be thinking, I mean, a few years ago, if most people would think about it, you just think it's a load of mud huts, you
Yeah.
know, But I bet it's not like that. I bet there's
Yeah.
some really nice bits to it now,
Yeah.
and it's not to say that we're better than everyone else, but we have a society which we've built, and
At a
yeah.
level, you have to think that as well, though, isn't it? Like, that we are better than others,
Well,
because everyone else thinks that as well, right? Like, so, people in Saudi Arabia think they're better than others. They, like, because you have to have that connection. Otherwise, what
I
are
know
you
what you
doing,
mean. Yeah, I know what you
right?
mean. Because we couldn't have had an empire unless we thought we were better than everyone else.
Exactly.
I'm not saying
You
that.
wouldn't have had the confidence to
Yeah,
say, like, hello, we
it was
want to conquer
necessary.
you,
It
please.
was
Yeah.
necessary to think that way in
Yeah.
order to build an empire. And
Yeah.
we could build an empire here. You
Yeah.
know, um,
But that's the thing, like, that's what we've lost, because maybe it was just looking externally, and the extent at which we can capture other things that
mm,
was making all the pride, but it
mm.
wasn't internal looking. And that's why, like, again, like, that's why. But do you think that there's legs to it, in a way that if I were to start something, right, with the help of other people and stuff, a cultural sort of movement that is built on creating a new media, a collection of people coming together,
Yeah, I do think there is. Yeah,
that people would support, like, with money, like, financially support a project
well,
like
you'd have
that,
to
that they would
start. You'd have to start, wouldn't you? I mean, it's like
yeah.
I mean,
It's not just like giving reactions or like
mm,
news and stuff, but actual cultural stuff. Start doing, looking at history and stuff, doing programs, doing documentaries, doing daytime TV, right? Like, creating your own daytime TV and stuff like that, just so that it's not about just getting angry and stuff. It's just about
mm.
loving your country.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, I think there is something to that. I mean, I think that's a very positive vision, but the thing is, these things won't happen overnight.
No. No.
You've got to be in it for the long haul. I
Yeah.
think, because and from my point of view, I'm 56 now. And
Mm.
I'm thinking, well, am I going to see an improvement in my lifetime?
Mm.
You know, at the moment, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
But, I've got two girls and I've got a granddaughter now.
Yeah.
You know, and I've
You
got to think
want
of
things
her.
to be better for
I've
them.
got to think of her.
Yeah.
What kind of a man would I be if I thought, oh well, fuck it, I'll be dead soon.
Yeah.
What kind of a man would I be if I thought that?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and then the other thing is, it's also not only is it sort of reckless and cowardly, it's just a bit, well, it's just a bit unambitious.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, well, our best days are behind us, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, all right then. Oh, let's all shut up shop and go home, shall we?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
but
It's just still
you
our
know,
country then.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, I think particularly from your point of view. I mean, you do have a, and I hate to bring this up, but as a non-British person,
Hmm.
not non-English person,
Hmm.
you can speak about it with an intensity that another person, a native-born Englishman might not be able to. You
Hmm.
know, it shouldn't
That's
be the
what I
case.
want. But that's what I want. My intention is to bring that back.
Yeah, yeah, well,
Right.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course, it shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
It is the case. You
Yeah.
know, and if you think about these, the anti-British types are in charge
Yeah.
of all of the institutions.
Yeah.
So we got a work cut out here.
Yeah. But
Because
like I just feel like if there was someone or like organization or people come together and they present the idea of a new institution which is pro-British, right? This is the reason why people supported GB News when it started.
Mm,
But then it became mostly just about outrage and stuff like that, and
mm,
it's because they base their model on sponsorship model, right? Getting money
yeah,
from sponsors and stuff
mm,
rather than from subscription from people, support from people.
yeah, yeah,
But this is why people supported GB News at this, because it was that's how I feel like if there was a proper push to give people hope, and it wasn't just about that those people making money, but actually giving back to people as well, and helping communities and stuff. We have understood that the government is not going to do it, the king is not going to do it, so us the people will do it ourselves then,
mm,
right?
mm.
But
Well, I
there
think
is a funnel for people to actually point towards. I think so people will cling on to it because people are desperate for a vision, a
yeah,
hope.
they're desperate for good news. I mean, people are demoralised. I mean, you've only got to look at um, you've only got to look at all the things that we've been made to swallow, and
Yeah.
how terrible we are, and
Hmm.
how fucking racist we all are, and
Yeah.
and I mean, I get affected by that, and I'm 56.
Yeah.
Imagine how you feel if you were 16
Yeah.
and they were telling you
That's
that.
what I'm concerned about. Yeah.
Yeah, and um, there's a Twitter account I follow, and it's relevant. It's just about they promote good news about British
Mm.
manufacturing. Now,
Yeah.
I've always been interested in that,
Mm.
and I've always bemoaned the fact that we don't make as many things as we used to, and all the rest of it.
Mm.
Um, but it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
We still producing a hell of a lot of stuff, and it's just
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
Um,
But just
and
about connecting people with it,
yeah,
it just, you know, and that's why I think like a new forum like that, a new cultural movement like that would take people away from the doom and gloom. It's like,
mm,
okay, we know what we are against, but let's focus on what we are for. And once we are
mm,
for something, that thing that we are against will naturally be against it, and that will be
mm,
shunned out eventually from our culture.
mm,
Islamist and
mm.
stuff like that will go away, but we need to give our people something. And I think
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah.
something, but
I
that's
think,
a
yeah.
um
But just
yeah.
on that, there's this. See, one of the things that happens if you get into a conversation with an anti-British type,
Hmm.
whoever that might be, and they'll say something like, "Well, of course, Churchill caused the Bengal famine, don't you?"
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll say that, and then had you only known about Churchill because of the Battle of Britain and
Because
and
you're
and,
looking for
and
bad
the
things.
darkest, that you've only heard this good stuff about him, and
Yeah.
then someone comes along and says, "Oh, he caused the Bengal famine, don't you? Fucking
Yeah.
racist bastard."
yeah,
And because you don't know that, because you've never been taught that, so you think, oh, well, this person might know something that I don't.
yeah,
You know, as if you anybody, if anyone was to look into it, he didn't cause the Bengal famine.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
the Japanese that caused the
yeah,
Bengal famine.
yeah,
But it's but it's one of those things where somebody with some knowledge comes in, and they come in and they say something like that, and then
yeah,
you're put on the back foot, and you think, oh, I don't want to look stupid by just supporting Churchill when I
yeah,
don't have all the facts.
yeah,
So you get these people who've got some education and they know some things, and
yeah,
they know a few things that you do that you
yeah,
don't, and they can undermine what you
yeah,
think by just saying, "Oh yeah, so you didn't know that, did you? Didn't know that he was a racist
yeah,
bastard and he caused the Bengal
yeah.
famine." You know,
And that's the whole idea as well of like creating something, a cultural movement like that, because you're connecting people with the culture through educating them,
yeah,
right? Appropriately educating them, educating in the new media way of educating people, not like just in the schools and stuff. But the
mm,
more you grow that movement, the more that you start creating your own schools, right? The more support you have of people, you start creating your own schools. You have another church associated with you, right? Who's not Church of England. You like the more subscriptions of people that come in who are like interested in the movement, you start creating new churches in every town of that church, right?
mm, mm.
That's how I think. So town after town after town, you start gaining momentum, but you have to build a base.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be, yeah. I mean, it would be interesting if you could get people to sort of marry a kind of Christianity to
Mm,
patriotism.
yeah.
Now, that's tricky because if you go to a Christian church, it's all about inclusion and
Mm,
let's not be
yeah, that
nasty
has
to
to
these
go
people,
away. Yeah.
but it's ingrained in the Church of England. Oh, it's
Yeah,
like,
that's why
oh,
it's
well,
like the Church of England
yeah,
cannot be fixed.
yeah,
Things
yeah,
that cannot be fixed need to be gotten rid of.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you
I
associate
think,
different
yeah,
churches.
yeah, I think we ought to do a Henry VIII with the Church
Yeah,
of England.
exactly. Yeah,
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 take
that-
all their land off them.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I've eaten up a lot of your time now.
Yeah.
I'm getting messages from my wife as well, asking me when
Ah,
we.
right, okay. The tyranny, the spousal tyranny. Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, yeah. Thank you so much
It's a
for
pleasure, mate.
this
Pleasure, mate.
conversation. I think so. It
So
was a really nice conversation.
yeah, well, let's explore this idea of yours a bit
Yeah,
more, and
yeah,
we'll see what we can do with
yeah.
it.
Hopefully, I'll be able to
Yeah,
help give out a
yeah,
proper vision,
yeah.
and maybe we can start saving this
And
country.
I just wanted to say, mate, I just wanted to
Yeah,
say that you sometimes, and I know this is, it's I can get despondent myself,
yeah,
but I want you to keep on. I want you to keep on and keep on being positive and doing the things that you're doing because
yeah.
these things don't happen overnight,
No, no,
you
I
know.
know.
And
There's some days like you just get like, oh, what is
yeah,
even the
I
point?
know exactly, exactly. I was in a bit of a shitty
Because
mood
I'm
myself.
tired of talking about it. Like
Yeah,
generally, like I'm tired of. I want to do something. I want to
yeah,
start doing something. It's like I am
yeah,
always like that sort of person. I've only been talking about it like with people for 3 months, and I'm already tired. It's like no,
yeah,
I'm a man of action. I need something.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to do the same thing myself as
Yeah,
well. So it's different
yeah.
to yours,
But
but
it's important to talk about it as well. That's the thing.
yeah,
People need to know. People
yeah,
need to be made aware. People need to be awakened.
yeah.
But yeah,
So yeah, let's get it on. Let's build something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for being on the podcast,
yeah.
and everyone else. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you later some other time. Thank you.
Okay, man. Take it easy. See ya.